So, Payday 3 announced Skills 2.0 a few days ago at this point, or at the time of recording, I should say, and I figured I might as well talk about it because it's something that a lot of people have been wanting to talk about in regards to Payday 3, which is, it's a good thing, honestly, because this game could deserve. It needs some positive attention at this point. And if you couldn't tell, I'm not going to script this because, I just want to talk about this. I have notes, of course, but I'm rusty. I haven't done this in a while. So, I figure the best way to talk about this is to just say, I like Skills 2.0. I think it's cool, but I think, let's go to the disclaimer here. Yeah, all numbers, descriptions, functionality, cost, basically everything you see in text and images is work in progress. One of the things that I want to see changed is how much these cost, because you can see in this image, in all these images, I guess, the base skill is going to cost 1 skill, but as of now, the way we're assuming it works is that the base skill will cost 1 point, and acing it will cost another point, making it so the maximum amount of points you can spend in a tree is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. It's not capturing my mess, but whatever. But effectively, that means that you can get 12, you can get effectively max out 2 trees easily and have that be what you use primarily, even though you're probably not going to need to, which will make the big concern about that is everybody's going to spread themselves way too thin, way too easily on all these trees and get a bunch of good things without any real downsides. So, my idea at the moment for basically a remedy of this, because again, the cost is something that people are concerned about, and this is the first thing I want to talk about with Skills 2.0. My idea with Skills 2.0, in terms of how much things should cost, is first still, keep that at 1 point, that's fine. The second skill tier 2 here, yeah, let's maximize the image. Tier 2, one skill will cost 1 point, but another skill will cost 2 points. So, one of the skills, presumably the weaker one with less, with armor, with the Juggernaut tree, armored up one would only cost 1 point because it's only applicable to armor bags, and you can easily run this without armor bags. But Headguard would be 2 points because it's something that everybody would want to go for. Tier 3, 1 point, one skill would be 2 points, and then the other one would be 3 points. Each one of these doubling when you ace it. So it would be a bit more expensive, but to a reasonable extent to get every skill in a tree, with tier 4 being just 3 points fixed. No real need to adjust that all that much. I mean, this is just a suggestion for Starbreeze at the end of the day, so take it with a grain of salt from somebody who is seeing this and wants to suggest things that could potentially make the game better. I mean, a while back when the before the trip laser was added, I remember I specifically sent a letter to Starbreeze saying, hey, something for choke point, basically the wording for the trip laser when it was released was basically exactly how I worded a suggestion in the official feedback forums. So, I don't know, I feel like I'm kind of responsible for something like that, so I figure I might as well help out with this kind of stuff too. So with that, it would make it a lot more difficult to, say, get 2 bags, disengage from enemies, while also making it so that you can't do that and invest in everything else at the same time. Even with the horizontal speccing into skills that Skills 2.0 would allow, which again is why I think it would be a good idea to have it so that skills, more expensive, but specifically 1 point, 1 point and 2 points, 2 points and 3 points, and then fixed 3 points for the final skill. And the last thing to say about my idea for how many skill points things should cost. With the idea I implement in mind, the total cost for acing an entire skill tree, for as it is now, if everything costs 1 point, getting everything at base would be 6 points, because 1 point for each skill. Make that 12 for 6 points. 6 points is doubled, because you're putting 2 points into each skill. With the idea I have of 1 point, 1 point and 2 point, 2 point and 3 point, and then 3 point, that would make it so that getting every single base skill in tree costs 12 skill points, and acing all of them costs 24 out of the 28 skill points we have so far. However, I have no idea how many more skill points we're going to get, if any, when Skills 2.0 comes out. Because my idea of if we're going to implement, like if Starbreeze is going to go with the idea I'm proposing of 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, and 3, then I would say maximum of 35 to 36, maybe 40 to just make it a well-rounded number. But even then, 35 or 36 would probably be the best idea for something like this, because those just keep it reasonable and don't give you too many to play with, while also making you feel like you can still invest in things reasonably, even if increasing that maximum would kind of negate the point of making them more expensive, unless you add more. And you could easily add more with this system, which I think is kind of beautiful. Like, I like that, the idea of being able to add more. Like, again, we're already suggesting things like, for me, consumables, revolvers, assuming they're not handguns, and tools to make them actually viable, particularly the infrasonic mine. And other people are putting up ideas like a better adrenaline skill tree and one for human shields. Those kinds of things. People are already coming up with ideas, and who's to say they should stop here? Like, that's what I think is really the good potential of this. A couple concerns I have when looking over all the skills, though, is that there's nothing to replace... what is it here? There's nothing at all to replace Clean Slate. Which, I mean, it's one thing to have nothing else. Like, you know, I'm fine with something like Play-Doh being removed because the Juggernaut tree is going to have 1% damage reduction, plus 1% damage reduction for every point in the tree, and it's like everything's going to run this. My concern is that adaptive armor is basically going to become obsolete with this, because otherwise there would be no point to run adaptive armor, like, at all, because if you can't restore your armor with anything except an armor bag, that's going to make armor bags way more relevant, and, you know, considering how scarce they can be at times, that could be a bit concerning, especially if you're running a low adaptive plate build. Like, say you want to run a 1 or 2 plate adaptive build. I mean, I'm a person that in the current day of Payday 3 runs a 2-plate adaptive build. I'm ridiculous, I know. But it works really well, and it's a playstyle I really enjoy, but I can get away with it because I don't have anything for my health, and I can also use armor repair kits to restore one of the adaptive plates, and if I ever really need to, I'll pull out the armor bag and restore a second one. Because, I mean, let's be honest here, everybody runs impact armor nowadays. And if you don't, you're using an armor repair kit to fill up a blue plate. That's just how it is. But it's just a thing of, I want impact armor, or I want adaptive armor to not disappear. I want it to not just become a thing that nobody uses because it doesn't have any sort of niche whatsoever, aside from just, I don't want to fully commit to the blue plate. So, at some point, I do believe, like, I do have other things later on that I want to talk about to basically address this, with the idea of having a skill tree for tools and consumables. So, I might as well go over that now, because I have... Actually, no, there's one other thing I want to say, and that's about... Let me get down to... Not Shotgunner, it is Hitman. Gain proficiency with handguns. The wording of this is very particular, because handguns specifically, note how it doesn't say sidearms. That's what I immediately think. Like, I'm thinking with this, it's going to be, handguns are still going to be an option, but, you know, say for things like the Justicar or revolvers, they're not going to be affected by this line, which I really hope that Starbreeze can clarify, or somebody within Starbreeze can clarify, whether or not this whole skill tree will count towards revolvers, because if it does, then my idea of a revolver-specific skill tree would kind of be moot. But assuming that that is how it works, then I think a revolver skill tree would be cool. I also am going to agree with multiple other people that stockpile skills is just like, this is a dead slot. The ammo economy in this game is a joke. There's no way you're getting short on ammo unless the enemies decrease in number and there's less ammo to go around, period. But even then, I don't know. That's another discussion entirely. But anyway, back to revolvers. I have an idea for a revolver skill tree. So effectively, the first skill, the base skill, would have an increase in armor pen by, say, 0.5, 1%, depending on how many, for each point you put into it. And let me see my notes here. Yeah, armor pen. And stagger chance to be the aced variant. These could possibly be swapped either way. Just something to make revolvers feel specific. Like you really need to pull out the big iron and just kill a bunch of people and then everybody steps back because, oh no, he's got a big iron. You know, that's the kind of fantasy you have with revolvers. My tier 2, skill 1, every headshot kill with a revolver, restore 1 bullet with a 5-second cooldown, 2 seconds when aced. That's the idea. So that instead of a stockpile skill, there would be a skill to help restore ammunition to the gun. So that way, we just get ammo straight up for doing like, instead of just having to scramble for it sometimes, every once in a while, you're given a little bit of leeway for, you know, especially for something like a shotgun, because, I mean, come on, let's just be entirely honest with ourselves here. The ammo funnel replenish combo with the double barrel, yeah, the Mosconi 12, the ammo funnel replenish playstyle with the Mosconi was very fun because it's basically a high risk, high reward of be accurate with the double barrel, one tap everything in your sight, and if you miss, you gotta reload and make yourself extremely vulnerable. That kind of thing can be very fun. It just depends on how well it's balanced and how much of a, say, timer cooldown there is for how quickly you can get that ammo back, kind of thing. For the other tier skill that I wrote up, increase armor piercing whenever shooting towards the body and or increasing headshot damage the more body shot damage you do first. I think my idea was one of those would be, like, you know, the more body shots you land, the more damage you'll deal when you land a headshot. So that way you're incentivized to basically do crowd control. If you're shooting at one enemy, it will hit more enemies, and this is elaborated more on the tier 3 skills. First one being decrease bloom between firing shots the more accurate you are, so you can basically quick draw like 5 or 6 shots so you can effectively empty the entire barrel up to 20%. Aced whenever the final bullet kills an enemy, double the speed of your reload, so that way you can essentially get a faster reload as a reward for killing enemies quickly. Or for killing enemies in a more stylish manner, in a way. Second skill on tier 3, if a shot hits an enemy and doesn't kill them, the bullet will pierce another enemy, which the idea of this one is supposed to make it synergize with the earlier skill where you're incentivized to shoot towards the body, because the center of mass, the torso, is going to be something you're aiming towards more often than not, and when you aim towards that, you're going to hit somebody behind the enemy you're shooting at, assuming there is an enemy behind them. So that way you can end up doing a lot more crowd control and taking care of a lot more enemies that you really need to. Even if it doesn't kill, which, I mean, the aced of this skill I have makes it destroy 1 armor layer of whatever enemy it pierces. Which, you know, let's say it caps at like 2 or 3 enemies it pierces. That's 3 enemies that lose an armor layer. Which, you know, I'm not even going to get into the whole armor layer debate of like how many are each one gonna have, because that's something only Starbreeze can answer. But the last skill I have on this for the idea of a revolver skill tree is basically bringing back shock and awe. Whereas if you get a kill with a revolver, you know, say it's with get a kill with the last bullet in the revolver. You would effectively stagger any enemies within 5 meters of you, and my idea for aced is it would be either remove the need to... Oh wait, no, that's a different skill. But basically, aced would increase the range of that tenfold. But it would be something that could only activate with revolvers. If anybody has feedback for that, even somebody in Starbreeze, I'd love to hear it, so that, I just want to give ideas for things to improve this, and, in essence, balance it so that it's not extremely overpowered, while also, it fills a power fantasy without completely curb-stomping the game at the same time. So the other 2 skill trees that I had ideas for are one for consumables and another for tools, because, man, the infrasonic mine gets no love. And for good reason, it sucks! But I want to make it, the idea behind the skill tree is effectively making it so that every tool can be used in Loud effectively. So, microcams in Loud, which, in Loud they would effectively be a second trip laser. Just, they would be a second trip laser, just less effective. Or they just have a very short range, I should say. And infrasonic mines, effectively just have them be an actual mine, like an actual piece of C4. Just turn the infrasonic mine into C4. Could it potentially break locks or something? I don't know, maybe, but it's something. It's something to do. So, let me go over the tools skill tree, because there's another one that I have for consumables, but really the only things of real note I would have for that are move the consumerism skill off the hostage tree, because you're going to get a bunch of resources through that anyway, but the main thing of that is you trading hostages. So that should be the focus, and maybe have it be a human shield skill there instead. Because, I'm going to link the video in the description below, but I liked the ideas that Bob Feet had about some new skills, particularly a human shields skill tree, because human shields are cool and underutilized, just like the infrasonic mine. So for the tool skill tree idea I had, Tier 1, the base skill. This would increase effective range of tools per point invested by 5%, so it's the trip laser, it has a slightly longer beam, the motion sensor can mark enemies from further away, etc. Stuff like that. And, infrasonic mine has a bigger explosion, that kind of stuff. Acing the skill will add 1 tool to your loadout for every 2 points you invest in the tree. For every 2 points you invest in the tree after that point. Actually, no, at that point. So you would basically, as long as you get at least that skill, you get always one more tool. Tier 2, first skill, makes the infrasonic mine stun last longer. Aced makes it actually deal damage to any cops within range. So it would stun enemies while also dealing damage to them, as, in the same function as an explosion from a grenade. It wouldn't, also become stronger off of grenade skills like that, but it's the idea of using the infrasonic mine as a fixed landmine. Sort of like the Hitman games, where you can plant an explosive charge somewhere and remotely detonate it. Something akin to that. Especially because my idea with this is something like the map on Cook-Off. If you put the infrasonic mine on the sabotage spot where the sabotage squad goes to power it off, you can set off the infrasonic mine and literally explode it on them and deal a bunch of damage and possibly even kill them without needing to leave. For doing that premeditative planning for setting up a defense for something that you would otherwise need to go outside and manage. It's a way of managing it, but in a different way, and that kind of thing could be fun. Second skill on Tier 2 will allow tools to be picked back up, the skill I believe is called Total Recall. Or Full Recall, not Total Recall. It should be called Total Recall. Would allow tools to be picked back up. Ace allowing you to pick up tools even after use. So say you use an ECM, say a motion sensor already scans a bunch of people and it runs out of fuel effectively. You would still be able to pick it up and then put it back down for an investment of a bunch of skill points, which I think would be enough reward for investing that many skills into a tree, into this kind of tree. Tier 3 first skill lets ECMs last twice as long once they're activated, and the aced skill functions effectively just like cam distortion in the game as it is now. Cameras within 0.5 meters of ECM jammers you own are disabled. This effect starts when the ECM jammer is placed and lasts until the ECM jammer is removed or used up. The reason I'm not going to keep the last until the ECM jammer is removed or used, or the used part of that, not removed, because if it's removed then there's no point. But it's effectively, it's the third tier skill, so you're already investing either 4 to 6 skill points with the idea of, having the cost scale. You're investing a lot of points into that anyway. At least you should be able to use the ECM. The second skill on tier 3 is one specifically for loud, letting you replenish tools with 50 ammo pickups, and the aced skill reduces that to 25 ammo pickups, so that way, even if you don't get special kills, even if you don't have a handgun, that'll still let you get tools back eventually. Just with enough killing and enough effort. So say you get a mine set up on a door, you get the skill to blow up a bunch of enemies that come through, you can kill all those enemies and get their ammo effectively for free, and once you kill enough of them, you can get another mine to set up and rinse and repeat. You're gonna need to get some kills with your main weapons, but even then, it's a case of replenishing your things is never a bad idea, especially when it's not something especially when it's only something offensive. Not something like deployable, which that's gonna be interesting to see in action. And for tier 4, the final skill, all tools will mark enemies in their range. For tools that already mark enemies, the marks will last 50% longer once they leave marking range, which is effectively for motion sensors and trip lasers, so that way they still have a benefit from this rather than just zero benefit whatsoever. But this would also make microcams useful and loud as effectively oh no, we went loud, alright, this is going to function as a trip laser now. So that way it can go double duty. But the drawback is going to be it can't cover an entire hallway. It's just going to be anything that comes extremely close, like 2 meters away from it. 2 meters away from it at base, unless you invest in the base skill, which would increase the range by 5% so that it can eventually reach the range of a trip laser. But even then, a trip laser will still have its uses at that point, because whatever choke points you were using it in, they just got a whole lot wider. Once you have a long enough laser, it can catch anything in that range. Like the hallways in Syntax Error. Those have a dead zone that enemies can avoid walking into if you put a trip laser on one of the walls. I'm talking about the basement specifically. But increasing the range would make it so that there is no dead zone and those enemies will always be marked. So that would effectively be the idea behind it. The aced effect of this final skill, for my idea of it anyway, would make any enemy affected by your tool suffer either a 20% defense penalty, particularly for something like infrasonic mines, which would deal damage, or for the ones that mark enemies, a minus 20% damage penalty, which is effectively every tool except ECMs, because ECMs already have their own loud tree, until they are unmarked. Which is effectively, it gives tools a use outside of just see where the enemies are. Which could be useful, it just depends on the 20% are placeholder numbers, obviously, but it's just a thing of, this is the kind of idea that I have, and I want Starbreeze to take it under consideration. I'm not saying to replace any of the old skill trees, no, but even though I do think that some of them, like, which one is it? Is it Imposter? Yeah. The Imposter tree needs work, because this one is just... It's oil and water. Like I said when I was initially watching the video by Bob Feet, it's just like, it's oil and water. You have the tier 1 skill and the tier 4 skill, which are purely for loud, except for the ace on tier 1, which, I don't mind the idea of adrenaline replacing rush in stealth, because you need to have something, otherwise you can just get away with anything scot-free, and that's just ridiculous. But why... Like, while you have adrenaline, gain a 2% damage bonus for each point added to the skill line, and your adrenaline damage bonus increases to 3%. That just sounds ridiculous when 4 of the 6 skills in here are for stealth and stealth only. That's ridiculous. This needs to be reworked. The tier 1 and tier 4 skills need to be moved somewhere else. They need to be swapped with some other tier 4 skill somewhere else. Because as it is, that just does not work. Say, maybe let's go with the idea of me, the idea I had of there is a consumable skill tree, one for first aid kits. Adrenaline Junkie and Seeing Red would fit perfectly on a skill tree like that when paired with first aid kits. Because that's something that you would want to have all the time. I mean, I can see sort of what they're going for when these adrenaline skills on tier 1 and tier 4 are next to the pill pusher, which is for medic bags where you're getting health anyway. But these are also high investment skills for loud when 4 of the 6 skills are for stealth only. It's just ridiculous. My long story short of my opinion on Skills 2.0, I think it's good. I just think it needs a little bit of work. A lot of work, actually. A lot of polishing, a lot of tweaking, especially some balance passes. And it's also going to be interesting because this is going to be... like, in the bigger picture, this is 1/3 of a trifecta of the game's balance. This is the trifecta. This is the one piece of the puzzle of the heister's abilities, the player's abilities. After this, we are going to need to see how the economy works and how many, like the resource economy, how many things are available at all times, how often can you actually do things reasonably. And then the final thing, how strong are the enemies? Are they too tanky? Are they not tanky enough? Are there more of them than there need to be? Are there not enough of them? That kind of thing. This is, for what we're seeing, this is great. I like what we're seeing, and I think a lot of it is good, with work, obviously. But this is only one piece of the puzzle, so I'm not going to pass full judgment on it. But as it is, it's good. It just needs a bit of work and tweaking, because especially with things like the imposter skill line, you need to move some stuff around. But yeah, the long story short on my feelings about Skills 2.0, it's good. I just hope that the rest of the game's balance follows suit. So, thanks for watching, or listening to me ramble about this, I guess, is more accurate to say. So, yeah, I just hope you enjoyed, and have a good one.